Hey everybody, Pastor Aaron here. I've got a funny story for when I was in ninth grade. I used to go over and hang out with my grandfather and my grandmother in a city not far from my hometown. And when we were done, he usually bring me back. Between his house and my house was a big new mall. He was a big photographer, so he liked taking photos, and so we stopped by the camera shop to get used to have film developed, and so he had to pick up some pictures that he had made, and I had been playing on the way there. I was just bored, kind of in the camera store, and so I had kind of been playing with this rubber band that I brought from his house. So at some point I was just joking around, and I had twisted my hair into like a little ponytail. I know it's weird to think of me with hair, but I twisted what little hair I had. I was in high school, into like a little teeny ponytail, and was just playing around with it. Well, I guess at some point during the camera shop and our mall visit, I forgot that I'd put my hair up in this tiny little goofy little ponytail, and I on the way out, I saw some friends from school, and I got to talk to those friends. One of them was a girl I thought maybe was kind of cute, and so I, of course, talked to him for a couple minutes, and then we left. I get in the truck as my grandfather's taking me home. I get in the truck, and I, thinking about my interaction there and how it went, and I run my hand back behind my head and feel that the whole time I had that little ponytail, and nobody said anything to me. I don't know if anybody saw it. I don't see how they could not have seen it, but I was so embarrassed because of what they might have thought I was trying to do or thought of me. Very often, you guys, we care so much about what people think that we're not willing to jump out and take risks. We're not willing to be brave. We're not willing to speak up for someone who might be hurting. And what I want to challenge you is in the time in which we live, there's such an urgency for people to know about who Jesus is, because creation is winding down. We are in the last days. We are entering, a time where the world is reflecting the world that Jesus talked about that would come right before his return. And, as I think about all the prophetic books and all the prophetic passages in the Bible is about 1/3 prophecy. And I think about the urgency of the time in which we live and how urgent it is for us to share the gospel, but we're scared. We don't want people to think we're crazy religious kooks. And for some of you out there, and you're thinking, I'm not one of those, I don't follow Christ yet, we have an urgent message that we must share no matter what people think about us. Though we may look crazy, today's main point is this, though we may look crazy, we must walk close to him, and we must serve him. We must seek to share the gospel. We've been in Daniel for the last several weeks, and Daniel is a guy who, in a culture that pushed back against his God and against his people who followed that one true God, Daniel stood courageous. And he led 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to stand up for their faith and make it real. So why should we walk close to God no matter the cost? No matter if it looks crazy, walk close to God. Well, here's 3 things I wanted to share with you guys tonight. You're going to be able to discuss those. First off is they might be jealous. And in Daniel 6, verses 3 through 4, and the whole passage that we're in is Daniel 6, 1 through 28. But as we look at our passage, and as we think about what how he stood courageously and bravely, you got to remember, people might be jealous. We need to walk with him no matter what. People may make fun of us, but it may not be because they think we're stupid. They may not think that we are ridiculous or crazy. It may be because they're jealous that we have something to stand for, that we have this claim of a God who absolutely loves us, that we might not just be in life exactly what we think. This could just be a shadow of what's to come. Verses 3 through 4 says this: Then this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners and satraps because he possessed an extraordinary spirit, and the king planned to appoint him over the entire kingdom. Then the commissioners and satraps began to try and find a ground of accusation against Daniel. See, they were jealous in regard to government affairs, but they could find no ground of accusation or evidence of corruption, inasmuch as he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption was found to be in him. You know, jealousy automatically, that feeling of jealousy automatically pits people against us. And in your own experience, when you are jealous of something, you are automatically making that person an enemy. And so we see that people may think we're crazy if we try to walk close with God, but it's could be because they're jealous. And so you got to remember that. Another reason why even if we look crazy, we should walk close to God, is that the price we have to pay may be worth it. And we know the story of Daniel. Daniel got caught praying. The satraps and the governors of the area had convinced the king to come up with a policy of no praying to anyone but the king. And so Daniel, who had been praying to God his whole entire life, didn't make it a secret that he continued to pray and go against that new law. Something you needed to know about kings back then: if they made a law, it didn't matter who disobeyed it, they couldn't retract that law, because that would put into question their own, they thought they were gods, so their own deity, to go back or to admit that they were wrong. And so we see that they caught Daniel, and the price for that was to be thrown in a pit with a bunch of hungry lions. Maybe on a starve day. I don't know if you guys know this, but zoos usually, like, to mimic the wild, zoos will, with especially lions and other carnivores like that, they'll feed them real big one day. Big wildebeest, just throw it out there. I don't know if it's raw or if it's like a butcher has got a steak cut out there for them or something, but they get to kind of glutton themselves for a day, and then they go on 2 days of starve days. And so on starve day, you get thrown in the lion's den for disobeying this law. And guess what? He got caught. And then this is what they said in verses 15 through 16. These men went to the king and said to them, "You as king know it is a law of the Medes and the Persians that no edict or ordinance the king established can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you." Some of the things that you go through might not just be about you. Some of the things you go through, and if you stand courageous and stand brave, it may be ministry to somebody else. I often wonder, the cancer that I went through back in 2007, 2008, I wonder sometimes, did it do me any good? Did I really grow and become this incredible person because I'd gone through cancer? I've grown a lot, but one of the things I have to remember is people were watching me go through cancer. They were watching me face chemotherapy. And sometimes, in some ways, shapes, and forms, that'll be used in ministry again when I can relate to somebody who's gone through that. Or if they watch me go through it and I handled it well, and I held my life, with an open hand. So the price we have to pay is sometimes worth it. And how many people do you think knew that Daniel had gone into the lion's den on a starve day and come out alive and unscratched? And what kind of witness about God is that going to be to those people? The last reason that even though we may look crazy, we must walk close to God, is that the one in control is God, not us. Let's see what verses 26 through 27 say of chapter 6. "I issue a decree that in all my royal dominion people must tremble in fear before the God of Daniel." This is the king now saying this after he's seen Daniel be saved. "For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He rescues and delivers. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. For he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lion." This king is realizing, it's not me that's the deity here. It is the one true God. It is the God of Daniel. It is the God of Jacob. It is the God of Israel. And we will make sure that we as a nation now repent and follow him. The king humbled himself. Often humility grows when we realize that we can't control everything. I don't know about you, but I'm a control freak, and I've had bosses who are control freaks. And we have to be careful because a lot of times that control comes from an element of pride. And so humility that's recognizing that God is in control and not us is a gift, a true gift. So Daniel did walk close to God, even though he may have looked crazy, but he got to show how courageous he was. He got to show how amazing he was. You guys, we see in the book of Daniel a lot of prophecy. A lot of the prophecy in the 1/3 prophecy of the Bible, a lot of it's in the book of Daniel. And it shows us this urgency of the coming times and how we must walk close to God, even though in our times it's going to be less and less cool to believe that Jesus is one day going to call us home, to believe that God is in control of this universe and not just the material world. And so what I want to challenge you all to do as you think through this, as you study Daniel chapter 6, is know that it all comes down to Christ. It all comes down to the urgency of us being separated from God because of our sin and our need for Christ daily, a relationship with Him, not just this simple belief, oh, I believe. Even the demons believe, Scripture tells us, but this relationship, this love, this dependency on Jesus to rectify us with God, to make us whole again, and to restore that relationship. Thanks you guys for listening, and I encourage you to discuss this. See ya.